It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of TAXITV Live. Yeah, baby. Woohoo! And this week, starring special, really super duper special guest, Mr. Dean Krippaehne. And Dean is going to talk about his brand new book. Hold on, wait for it. Whoops. Still waiting for it. There we go. His brand new book, Q-Tips. Oh, man. And I want you guys to know, hold on, got to get back to me so you can see this. I read the entire book over the weekend. Not that it was that hard. It's a very concise, very well-written book. So welcome, Dean, and congratulations.
Oh, thanks. Great to be here as always.
Well, I love having you. Dean and I've known each other for, I don't know, 20-ish years maybe? Is that possible?
Yeah, I know. We're only 19. Yeah.
I know. It's like Shirelli and I. He won't even let me say how many decades we've known each other anymore while we're on Taxi. I can only use the generic term. We've known each other for decades. Because when you know how many decades and you do a little math, it's easy to figure out how old we are. Anyway, and hello to everybody in the chat room. I see all your smiling typing as opposed to your faces. So today we're going to talk about Q-Tips, which obviously is the title of the book. But the thing that Dean did differently, by the way, he is also the author of these two, which preceded Q-Tips. Well, first was this one, Demystifying the Cue, which immediately caught fire and everybody loved it. And then he followed it up with this one, Demystifying the Genre, which is really, literally you cannot be in the sync business, whether it's songs or instrumentals, without having read these books. They're important. They're really important because they make it all real and simplify it, and plus you get a chili recipe in one of these books for Dean's famous chili. But so what he did with this book, which I read over the weekend, is left out the chili recipe and some of his usual banter, which in Dean's case is a plus because Dean is if you were going to go on a hiking trip, like a week-long hiking trip, Dean would be a great guy to have on the trip because his stories are entertaining. He's a raconteur. But this book gets right to the point. And I tabbed a lot of pages. And what I plan on doing during the show today is to hit some of the tabs. I'm going to try and hit some that are like more beginner-oriented and then some that might be for people that are more middling or advanced. So we get kind of a range. But I really want to keep at least the last half hour, which I always swear I'm going to do, and I don't. So today I'm shooting for the second half of the show, the last 45 minutes, to open it up to Q&A for you guys in the chat room. But I want to read you the introduction, which might be my favorite part of the book. At least the first two sentences. It says, Introduction. It has been nearly 20 years since I first stumbled into the sync music business. On a whim, I submitted a couple of neo-soul songs to a publisher through a company called Taxi, which ended up making their way onto a daytime TV show on the ABC network, and the show is called One Life to Live. These two songs were placed or synced in 15 episodes. About 9 months after those episodes aired, I received my first royalty check through ASCAP, and my eyes were forever opened, wide opened. Up until then, I had no idea you could make money from having your songs played on a TV show, let alone build a career that way. I could not be more proud of you for recognizing the import of that moment and for being a beacon of hope and a guiding voice, I guess, to the community of the uninitiated who... It's like, yeah, everybody's going after sync, but they don't know where to start. This is such a great book. All three books. I mean, honestly, I'm not saying this because Dean's a friend. I don't make a penny from this, although I got to say, on these two, we probably have the associate fee on Amazon, so I might make a penny, but that's about all I make. Anyway, I would never plug anything that I haven't read or I wouldn't personally endorse or, stand there on the public square talking about. You really need to have all three of Dean's books if you don't have them. Um, anyway, so let's just jump right into it, other than the first awesome page with the introduction. Um, there is other stuff that I've tabbed. So let's talk about mood swings, which I thought was a great title. So many people try and score an entire movie. Um, and Dean boils it down to, let's see, a single page. So tell them about mood swings, Dean.
You whatever genre or whatever mood um, you're writing your cue in or your song in, you from the downbeat to the end of the cue, you want to stay in the same mood. You want to stay in the same vibe. You want to stay. Don't change moods. Don't change tempos. Don't change vibes. And of course, you want to grow that mood throughout. Grow the emotion. If it's a tension track, you want to have it be pretty tense from the get-go, but then increase in tension throughout, depending on. I mean, even in tension, there's that genre. There's probably 50 subgenres of tension, but keep it tension. If it's a funny track, a comedy or a dramedy, keep it funny throughout. If it's melancholy, keep it that way throughout, because when the music supervisors are syncing our music to shows, they have one mood that they want to convey in one scene, and they're going to use hopefully our whole sync, but a lot of times they'll use maybe just 20 or 40 seconds of our cue or our song. And when they want to change the mood, they're going to use another piece of music. And if your song changes moods, they can't use it in that scene because they are conveying one mood in there: happy, breakup, whatever, you name the mood. So it's so important just to keep it the same from the get-go, and not, and if you're doing a radio song or you're doing a radio, see, that's my age. If you're doing a playlist song, you can change it up. You can do whatever you want to do. You can have tempo change. There were tons of songs when I was coming of age. One that I used to love by the Doobie Brothers called "Jesus Is Just All Right." It's got this slow down tempo in the middle of it. It changes, and that's great if you're an artist doing radio songs. But for sync, they want to use it for one scene, one mood, and stay the same. Keep it the same. Don't change mood or tempo or even key. Don't change the key.
Oh yeah, change the key, make it impossible to edit, because
Yeah.
the part that they like, they may need to use the back half of it where the tempo picks up because the scene gets more exciting, but they can't because it's in a different key and it would be too obvious.
And there are so many times when they are using, say, 38 seconds of a cue or a song, but they want it to end. And so they're going to take that little stinger button end that you have in the same key, and they're going to splice it right there at 38 seconds. And so, yeah, if you change keys or change moods or tempo, anything, it's not going to fit. And it has to fit there because they will end scenes like that quite a lot. Splice that in.
Going slightly off script, maybe you do talk about this in the book, but I didn't see it. Maybe you did in the section about have edit points. So you've been doing this for almost 20 years. How many times have you had an entire cue or an entire song get used in all those years and thousands of placements?
Not a lot of times. There have been some times when a full 2-minute cue's been used. In fact, I had one in a show called Hunters behind the great Al Pacino while he was doing a monologue that they used the full instrumental part of that, but very seldom did they use full, whether it's a vocal song or they're gonna, their business is to sell the movie or to sell the TV show. It's not to wave a flag on how great we are, and that's a tough pill to swallow sometimes, but we are there to help their movie or their TV show or their ad be great. And if we do get a foreground thing that goes on for a lot of minutes, hey, that, especially for people that are artists and they're doing their artistry, that can help break an artist. So it can be They can be really good, but yeah, rarely do they play the whole thing. You know,
Speaking of breaking artists, behind you I see a gold record on the wall. Anybody I know, and how did that happen?
oh, that right there from Taxi. Wait, there you go. There's a gold record from, and right next to it's a platinum. I can't point right,
Also
but
from Stephanie?
both of those came. Those ones right there came from Stephanie Heinzman, European artist, and I got that song placed to her through a Taxi listing to a publisher. Um, yep, yeah, that was that was real exciting through a publisher we used to know who's now passed away, but great guy, and yeah, gold, few gold records and a few couple platinums just off of that one song. So there you
Wow.
go, through Taxi. If it wasn't for Taxi, the publisher, and he, the publisher was Canadian. The artist was from Europe, and I live in Seattle, and you're in LA. I mean, how's that going to happen without Taxi hooking us all up? So yeah,
You have
thank
to
you.
tell me who the publisher was after the show's over. I want to take them off my Christmas card list. Um, I'm sorry, I literally can't remember who the publisher was. I'm obviously very sorry to hear that he or she
Yeah,
has since passed. Wow,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
not good.
yeah.
All right, going to my next tab. Oh, I get this question all the time. I now do, we have been for the last year or so, doing a thing called new member Zooms. That, like, we're doing one Wednesday of this week for everybody who joined Taxi in May. And we make it available to people who joined in March and April as well. But we're concentrating on May, and we want to introduce them to things that you learned halfway through your first year or three quarters of the way. People tend to kind of get with the program when their membership has just about run out on the first year. And they go, I didn't get any forwards. I didn't get anything placed in a TV show. I'm not going to renew. And it's like that cartoon that appears on our forum all the time. Somebody's got it in their signature with a guy with a pickaxe over his shoulder mining. And he's looking for diamonds. And he's like 12 inches away from hitting where all the diamonds or gold is, and but he turns around out of disgust and puts the axe over his shoulder and walks away. So we decided to start doing new member Zooms where we tell people stuff like the question you're going to answer now, which is, what is a button ending, or sometimes it's called a stinger ending, and let people know, because some people watching today might be new enough that they don't know.
Yeah, a button ending is basically at the end of your song or the end of your cue, you stop it. You don't fade it out. You just, dun 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 dun, and you could have that ring. You could have dun 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 dun. That could fade out, but you want to actually end the song, and that's because they'll take that and splice that all the time and splice it into your cue or into your song and end the songs. You button endings are, you want to do them all the time, and it really, don't know if I'd know how to fade out a song anymore. I've been doing button endings so long, and back in the days, in the 70s, you're doing records and you're always fading out songs.
Right.
And in fact, I can't even remember now, but I think I mentioned something in the book that how did all those DJs back in the day, segue from one song to the next when every song was fading out. But to the point here, you want to end your song, end it in the same key that if you're in the key of C, end it on the C chord. If you're in the key of A minor, end it on the A minor chord. Very important. And as additional, if you can do a little build-up, like a 4 or 5 second drum fill or something into that button end, sometimes those will get used more instead of just going along and ending it. They can actually take that and they go, oh yeah, this gives a real good punctuation on the end of the scene. So a little bit of a buildup in there can really help a lot too. Publishers, supervisors, they like that.
And editors love it because you make their job easier. We had a great editor do a thing at the Road Rally 2 or 3 years ago, And she suggested actually starting cues with like brrr, boom, something that bangs into the cue as well, because
Sure.
that gives them a big start, gets your attention, pulls you into the scene, and then the big finish. And so, these
Yeah.
all these things seem little maybe on their own, but you put them all together, and what you've got is something very usable.
You raise a good point there, and I think that it's really, it took me some years to get onto this, to change our mentality, or to add to our mentality from we're just creating music, we're creating stuff, we're creating, putting our heart and soul into it, and building our craft, but to also think, how is it going to be, how can I make the music editor's job easier? How can I make the movie, the director's job, how can I make them really want this? And think of it, how can I make a publisher decide that they really need to have my cue in their library? Really start putting ourselves in their place, and it really helps a lot in crafting what we're doing. At least it's helped me. I also do that when not being, I talk a little bit about this in there, not being that guy or that girl that's always bothersome and calling up the publisher every 3 days. No, don't do that. We don't want to call up our publisher or call up our libraries and bug them all the time. We want them to submit our music, have them sign it if they will, and then stay out of their way and let them do their job. We want them out there working, not answering our every question. So,
That's right. And you know what? Those questions are all pretty much answered, like on the Taxi Forum, for instance. Everything that you might encounter as a new member or somebody that just got something, an offer from a library for the first time, and you've got questions about the contract, the terms of the deal, how to deliver music to them, go to the Taxi Forums. It's free for even non-members can use it. It's forums.taxi.com. Incredibly generous community of people, even people that are as experienced as Dino, hang out on there and are so incredibly generous with what they know. It's funny, other forums, people that comment, and it's like, you call that music, kind of a negative vibe, whereas the Taxi Forum, by no intent of mine, I'm happy it turned out that way, but just the right people showed up early and they stayed there and created this vibe of generosity and helping other people rise to the occasion, and then they become their collaborators and their fan club and their family, and figuratively speaking. So
it's a great, it really helped me the first years it was up. I was on there all the time asking technical questions about this plugin or this DAW, or just finding general information. And one thing I've learned about people in this business is everybody's really available and open to sharing the information that they have. Us creators want to talk about how we're making our DAW work, how we're making our productions work, how we're making a particular instrument work, how we got a deal, how we are collaborating. We want to share that information. People are really open to sharing that. And the forums at Taxi, man, I learned so much there. And it was such a great way to begin relationships. I mean, if you go to the forum and hang out there and ask and are polite and professional, you're going to start to know people. And then if you add to that going to the Taxi Road Rally, you're going to get to the road rally if it's your first time, and you're already going to know 5, 6, 7, 8 people because you've been hanging out on the forum with them. It really helped me. I'm an extreme introvert, and it really helped me in my first times there talking to people, because I already
people
knew.
worry about that. They're going to get off the plane, come to this hotel with a couple thousand musicians, and oh my God, I won't know anybody, and I'm going to feel like a dork and a wallflower, and I won't know who to talk to or what to talk about. And inevitably, they meet somebody in the registration line. Like literally every single person meets people, especially the newbies, and that becomes your little tribe for the weekend. And that tribe introduces you to their tribe that they met last year and the year before that. And the year before that. Sorry, call maintenance. I just whacked my microphone. um, so yeah, you could be like Dean said. I've known Dean a long time. He was an extreme introvert, maybe still is, but amongst the taxi tribe at the road rally, it's impossible to explain it in a way that people believe it because it's like too good to be true, but it's real.
Yeah, it is. I've said this to so many people. The taxi road rally is actually what church probably should be. You know,
I've never heard you say that.
just this community of people that love each other and want to help each other and hang out and exchange information on every level, from the
Yeah.
most beginner to people that are quite advanced in far along in the journey. And yeah, if for those who are on the fence about it, man, you got to go. Forego drinking at Starbucks for a month, save up the money and go.
Yeah,
Or these days
absolutely.
forego drinking at Starbucks for a week. I guess it's
No
so
kidding.
yeah,
I use that analogy all the time around the office that, if you go to Starbucks every morning, forget 7 days a week because we know you go on weekends. Let's just talk business days. So, what does that work out to? 22 days a month that are actual, like going to the office days. And you go get a coffee and maybe a croissant. That's like what, $7, $8, $9? So let's call it $8 just to be a little conservative, and I think that's realistic. 22 days. Where's my calculator?
yeah.
Okay.
That's a
Let's see here. I'm gonna do some math, which is not my strong subject. Trust me. 22 days times $8 a day, $176 a month times 12 months a year. You will have dropped $2,112 on a cup of coffee you could have made for a quarter at home, and you could buy Pillsbury croissants, which are actually really good. And you would have more than enough money probably to buy a first class plane ticket and stay at the Westin, which is newly remodeled, by the way.
no 20 that with that amount of money. I mean, yeah, first class tickets, stay at the Westin, and they could pay for my trip.
Yeah,
It's perfect.
there you go. Well, and they could save up a little extra money and buy one of your books.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip this one. Let's go to Keep It Simple, Simon, because that's something that newbies often don't get right. They want to be chosen as composer of the year and have everybody in the edit bay or in a production meeting going, oh, that's the most brilliant piece of music I've ever heard in my life. Tell them what's really up.
Yeah, we have these great DAWs and all these tools and every plugin that you can afford, and unlimited channels. Yeah, you can just fill that with a whole bunch of crap. It'll probably sound like it's filled with a bunch of crap, but I got into this some years ago, and very simple. There are a lot of placements that are simply guitar, acoustic guitar. That's it. Just because maybe there's a pad that comes in 16 bars in there that's just in the background floating above it, but just an acoustic guitar you could do melancholy. I've used just acoustic guitar when I was doing a lot of those that show Duck Dynasty that was on forever. There were some of those. I didn't have the swanky resonator guitar, so I just tune my E down to low D and start playing some of that kind of stuff. That was really, I might have added a pad or something halfway through just to give it a little bit of a rise. But very simple guitar, and I mean, you don't have to be a great guitar player either. In fact, the more average guitar player you are, as long as you can play cleanly, almost better, because one of the challenges with people that have become great on their instruments and they can just play tons of guitar notes or tons of keyboard notes is that a lot of the time, I would say way more than 50% of the time, our cues and songs are going underneath an actor's dialogue.
Yeah.
And so if we've got too many notes, too much melody, it doesn't work. It conflicts with the actor's dialogue. So to keep stuff simple, and even the simple instruments, just a guitar, or if you are doing a bigger production, keep it more on the underscore side. Have enough melody to sell it. And I've done tons of those. I've done those with piano as well, where it's just a reflective, contemplative.
Yeah.
I went to school. Yeah, one of those pieces that's just piano. It's just there's a nice piano underscore almost. In fact, I did a whole CD of those last year for a library. And it was one of the harder projects that I've done. It was only piano, no other instruments. And they gave me these European artists I'd never heard of them, but they're new age, but not in the way new age was back in the 80s. It's a new kind of new age. And the piano parts are so simple that the challenge was, how do you create a mood with hardly any notes going on? It was quite challenging. What I thought was going to take me to do 10 of these things, what I thought was going to take me 4 or 5 days, it took about 4 weeks to do, because just to play that simply and all those sparse notes, and it worked, and I'm sure it's going to get lots of placements. But that simple stuff, whether it's simplicity in just 1 or 2 instruments, or whether it's keeping your full productions a little simpler and not having too many notes, both of those are concepts that we need to keep in our heads. There's still a place. One of our good friends, Keith LeBrant, who can just play fire guitar, just nuts. There's totally if you've got great licks and can play like that, yeah. Sports cues, there are cues that have that, but I'd say the majority of cues need to be a little bit simpler. But
absolutely, it's hard for musicians to do that because they've spent decades developing their craft and they want to show it off, just like a runner wants to win a race. And I get that, but in my personal experience and observations over 30 some years of running this company, I would say 80% of the placements are the most ridiculously simple stuff. Yeah. And people that send in cues that are somewhat sophisticated but send stems, the editor will almost always use the simplest version of the stems, just like on Duck Dynasty. I always tell people, if you can play a very basic, like arpeggiated 3-chord strum, brown, 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 and then take a Coracedon bottle, tape a pie tin to the back of your acoustic guitar, put a Coracedon bottle on the neck and go wah, 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 wah. That's a cue for Duck Dynasty and for a lot of other shows.
No, I thought I was going to make $1 million from Duck Dynasty because I bought one of their duck calls.
Yeah.
And I videotaped myself playing slide guitar on it and tried to send it to them going, yeah, hey, I've been doing music for you. You can market this and just give me 50%. But it didn't ever see the light of day. But it's what I also tell people is I think I've had a benefit that I'm not one of those lightning quick guitar players. I play average guitar. And so I can't play too many notes. But on my keyboard playing, I never try to change the way I write at first. If it needs to be a simple thing, I'm just going to play what's going to come out of me. And then I'll go back and edit and take out notes because I don't want to stifle the creativity. Let it all flow out, let it go. And then it's, especially if you're recording, it's hard to do if you're recording with a real Steinway, but if you're recording in the box with your virtual instrument, like I almost always do, very easy, Jen, just to pull out notes and weed your part down, make it a little simpler. So I do that. So, and it doesn't stifle your creativity. You can still do, put all your notes in there and then just go back and weed them out later.
It's so hard to do. It's harder to weed than it is to grow a fertilized crop, if you will. It's so hard, and I get it, but ask, Matt Hurt, who's probably like he was the genesis of so much that our successful members have become and paid forward. But it all kind of started with him and John Mazzei and Dino. There was a crew of 5 or 6 in the early days, but Matt has always said his most profitable cue was the simplest one he ever wrote, and it amazed him that something so stupidly simple, but they don't want, they meaning the executive producers or movie director or editor, if you notice the music, unless it's by intent being the caveat, but if you notice the music, you're taking your eyes, ears, and mind off of the scene, the dialogue, the emotion. The music, some people go, well, I don't want to create wallpaper. You're not. If you're creating wallpaper, you're creating the kind that adds an emotion to the scene. So there's still value in it, but simplicity allows you to do that more than, here's a little bit of Keith LeBrant. I called LeBrant up and said, I need a theme song for TAXITV, the virtual road rallies that we did during COVID lockdown. And I'm looking for early Joe Walsh meets ZZ Top.
Mm-hmm.
An hour later, he sent me back this, and I said, I love it. It's perfect. He goes, no, it's just a demo. That's not. I said, no, it's perfect, just like that. Anyway, the long version, he's riffing on the way out. Unbelievable. I can't even think like he plays.
He's got chops. There's no, but yeah, we do. We spend all those years, 5, 10, 20 years. I can play as fast, as many notes as I could possibly play. And then, Dean Krippaehne and Michael Laskow come along and say, no, you can't play that many notes.
But you know what? Please, not that you would ever be dishonest, but one thing I get from people who are unknowledgeable because it's early in their developmental arc on this is, I don't want to keep doing what people tell me I should turn in, and I don't want to do simple and hold myself back, and I'm not going to feel satisfied, artistically satisfied doing this work. Do you ever feel unsatisfied doing this stuff, or do you feel?
No, it's a craft. It is you're getting to put your emotion and your passion and your art into a specific craft. So those there are times when, so no, I don't feel unsatisfied. I'm always like, yeah, I nailed another one. Okay, and it's going to get placed over the next 10 years. I'm going to make, get checks all the time. But I do have my side projects where I've got a project that'll, not more than 30 people in the world will listen to when we put it out. A great bass player friend of mine, Dan Muller, we started doing it. And it's fusion kind of music. We're blowing chops all over the place. Nobody cares. I'm not going to place that stuff, but I wanted to get that out. We wanted to get that. I have songs that I've written that I want to write. I write them anyway because I'm not going to stop a song if it wants to come out. It may not be right for sync. That's okay. I still wanted to get that song out, and maybe I'll put it on Spotify or something. But then I'll go over here and I'll craft stuff that I can get paid for. So
they're not mutually exclusive. Writing simple for sync and doing a side project that maybe is a main project for 3 months, and then you come back to sync, whatever form it takes. Well, I have yet to meet anybody who's in your kind of level, the pantheon of successful sync musicians, that feels like they've stifled their creativity.
Yeah, and once in a while you get these. I got last year I did 2 CDs for a huge company, and what they wanted was 1950s jazz, and the list that they gave me was Coltrane, Charlie Parker, Miles, Freddie Hubbard, all these, and they gave me tons of specific songs. It was great because I could go listen to it, but they wanted, they didn't want cues. They wanted songs with real melodies that might have gone in these people's albums. So it was just like, I'm writing real songs as if it's 1953, and I'm hanging out with, I had to hire trumpet player and sax player that could handle that type of stuff, that can play Charlie Parker or Miles Davis. But that was great too. But yeah, sometimes you do get stuff where you actually get to do songs. Although I'll bet you money, as those things get placed over the years, they're going to use the underscore more often than not, where they take off the melody and it'll just be the vibe going on underneath. But still, I got to, do that, and that was a great, a fun change of pace for me.
Somebody, maybe several somebodies over the years have asked me, what is the most profitable genre and type of cue that I could do? And I actually have an answer for that, which is light cocktail jazz piano. And here's why. It's almost, I shouldn't say almost always, it's frequently used in its entirety because it generally falls under a scene in a restaurant or a bar where there's a conversation going on. And not too many conversations are 10-second conversations. You especially want to get placed in a scene with a husband and wife going out to a classy dining establishment for their anniversary, because if you've got a 2.5-minute light jazz instrumental, it's going to play during the whole time. And and a lot of soap opera usages have been that stuff because they spend an awful lot of time eating in soap operas. So there's my little piece of advice. That'll be my book, which will be one chapter.
I have to concur on that. I've had so much success doing cocktail jazz, piano, upright bass, brushes, drums, and maybe a kind of a Freddie Green guitar chunking along in there. In fact, I got one last year in of all things, and it was in a cocktail scene in whatever year it was, but it was Star Trek. So now I've got the music in Star Trek in a cocktail scene, but that was totally a cocktail piece. Yeah.
Somebody, I think Ken Messford commented, I haven't seen a lot of those. Frankly, many libraries have a really good stash of that stuff because it's a very useful genre for them to have. However, we do pick up the phone every now and then or send emails to libraries. I personally spend a stupid amount of time on my weekends listening to tracks that are in libraries that are Taxi clients. And I know these people well enough to pick up the phone and go, yo, George, your classical stuff sounds a little dated. Sound libraries have gotten so much better over the years. And same thing is true of piano samples. So something that was really well executed 7 years ago and used a really good piano sample, it's really hard to pin down why, and I'm an engineer by trade, why it is those old samples don't just sound dated, they sound like older samples. So I encourage libraries, if any of my library owner friends are watching, I encourage you to stay on top of things like cocktail jazz piano to make sure that it sounds like it's a great piano, not what a great piano was out of a box 7 years ago. Anyway, enough said about that. In chapter 12, it's called Hipsters and Oldsters. You're not talking about a person's age here. He says, Lord knows I don't want to talk about my age. Right there with you, buddy. To cut to the chase, you know what? I'm going to have, rather than me reading what you wrote, why don't you just tell us what this is about? Because I think it's important that people know this.
Well, there's a lot of, one of the things that's going to get asked for the most is what is the latest, greatest thing that's happening in music, and a lot of that in the last years has been hip hop or EDM or always pop music, whatever pop vibe is going on. A lot of singer-songwriter pop vibes from the last 10 years, I think, have gotten asked a lot of placements. But often overlooked is oldies songs, and a lot of what I've done is when publishers will ask for Motown, or they'll ask for early 70s funk, or they'll ask for a lot of these oldies styles, doo-wop, that maybe because of my age, I might have lived that vibe better than somebody that's 19 years old and is starting out doing this. They're probably going to be much more natural at doing EDM than I am, because I didn't grow up and immerse myself in that. But certainly Motown, the 70s funk, and it might not get as placed as much, but there'll always be uses for it, and there's always going to be scenes that go back and have time stamps in them, and it can be any genre, any old genre that you want to do. And I've had a ton of success with all of those genres, and and once you have that Motown piece out there, or that early 70s, I just did another last November, December, right when I got back from the Taxi Road Rally. I finished up a funk one, early 70s funk, which was really fun to do. That will get used next year, but it will still, when they need early 70s funk 10 years from now, it'll be used then too. So it's evergreen.
Right. EDM might not be.
Might not. Yeah.
But you know what? Somebody did a survey. I saw this Thursday or Friday last week. The number one, when they asked people, at least on a nationwide basis, if not some sort of global survey, and I'm not sure how incredibly scientific it was, but they asked people, what's your favorite genre? Classic rock came up as the big winner among all age groups. And you and I have children who are adult children that we did our best to raise them on some classic, James Taylor, Carole King, whatever of our era, the Beatles, of course. I used to sit with my daughter Hannah in my car in the driveway because the stereo sounded good. And we would listen to like the full Beatles White Album. Anyway, why is it that classic rock is pretty much beloved by all generations? Well, it's accessible, it's memorable, it contains emotion. Whereas, look, I'm not going to debate genres because there would be people that say EDM does that for me, and they would be right to think that. But classic rock, folks, you can never go wrong with classic rock. And like Dean said, there may not be as many opportunities for that as there will be for hip hop stuff replacements, but great authentic sounding classic rock that really sounds like the era is always great. By the way, I also want to add to this that we work with the top library and other libraries in the business that specialize in vintage music. They're now really on the hunt for stuff that was written and recorded in 1975, or written and recorded in 1982, or written and recorded even in 1945. And we've had some members that were in their 80s and 90s. A guy named Peter Sivo, who sadly passed away some years ago. But Peter Sivo, we hooked him up with a deal with probably by far my favorite library for vintage stuff in the industry. And that older gentleman, in his 80s and 90s was making tens of thousands of dollars a year on placements of music that he wrote and recorded during World War II when he was like 18 or 19 years old and in the Navy. So you just never know.
Yeah, it is that classic rock. I'll add a caveat to that too. And well, the Southern rock from the 70s was what Duck Dynasty was using. So I went back to all those Molly Hatchet, ZZ Top, Leonard Skinner, all that stuff, and just did that. But I had being an older guy like me, I have to make sure I pick the publisher's brain. I had a publisher ask me to do a CD, this is 4 or 5 years ago, of classic rock. And I started to do, get the Zeppelin tunes and all that, and start, okay, what were the drums doing, all that. And I'm about a week into it, and I thought, I better get some more clarification on this. And he's a younger, the main guy is a younger publisher, and he said his classic rock that he wanted was Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Nirvana.
Awesome.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
classic rock for him.
Get all the details ahead of time of what they think classic rock is. So yeah, to somebody who's 35 years old, that would be classic rock, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a surprise to me, but it once again told me get all my information and from the publisher and know exactly what they want.
See, earlier you said don't pester the publisher. You're right. Don't call the publisher and say, how long should it be? Call somebody else that has music in that library. And by the way, Dean answers that question in this book. He said 2 minutes is a sweet spot. You can't go wrong with a 2-minute cue. It could be 2 minutes and 4 seconds. It could be 1 minute and 57 seconds. Generally, the companies that run listings of Taxi are looking for 90 seconds up to 2.5 minutes. So 2 minutes is right in the sweet spot. I'm going to move on to something a little more sophisticated. Could still be applicable to so-called rookies, but you have a chapter 23 called Presets, Angels or Demons. Ah, yes, presets. So yeah, how do you feel about you and I rarely, if ever, as long as we've known each other, talk about engineering stuff. So I'm really curious. Well, I've read the book, so I'm not that curious, but curious for them to find out how you feel about presets.
Presets. I have a love-hate relationship with presets. I love, and I think I talk about this, but I'll just go from what's in my mind right now is that presets are often they're wonderful because it's a great starting point. Whether it's a guitar preset or it's a synth preset in one of your virtual instruments or a preset on a mastering gear or whatever it is, they're wonderful, but they're often way too much. They're way too many. A guitar setting might have chorus and reverb and a phase or something on it too. And man, oh, that sounds so cool. And you put it in with all your other instruments, and it's just way too much. It's conflicting with everything else. Why do companies have presets like that? Because when we hear those products, when I heard Omnisphere, which is one of my favorite plugins for synths, one reason I spent money on it, I just went, wow, those are so cool. And they are cool, and they're big sounds, and they use all these frequencies. But when you start putting those sounds into your mixes, they're using so many frequencies. If you use them as is, that man, you get 2 or 3 instances of them in 2 or 3 different instruments, and your mixes start getting smaller and smaller and smaller because the frequencies are canceling each other out. So, you don't need all that. I was going to say crap, but you don't need all that wonderful stuff on most of your, you can't have for most music, you can't have a guitar with 5 effects on it and keyboards with 5 effects on it and another keyboard part with 5 effects on it. It's just going to conflict.
These are basic rules of mixing even for records.
Yeah. So I use them as great starting point. Okay, that's where I want to go. And then I modify the presets to my taste. I do that with my mastering when I'm mastering stuff, it's very simple. My mastering process, there are many plugins out there. I use one called Ozone. I don't know if it's any better or worse than anything else, but I start with some of their presets, but I've got 3 favorites, and I've learned how to modify them to whatever kind of music I'm producing. Obviously, if I'm mixing cocktail jazz, it's going to be much different than I'm mixing classic rock. But I've learned that there are 3 or 4 things, they're limiters, they're compressors, and where I have to adjust them to make the mastering work out. So the preset are a great starting point, but rarely do I leave them as is. It's just it's too much. Too much.
I have many friends. I've had many friends over many years that have worked at companies, tech companies, musical instrument tech. And something that I've learned from probably 3 of them over time is that very often we'll take a preset that a famous engineer says, yeah, this is my vocal chain or this is my reverb preset. And they will say, it's a little too subtle. Do you mind if we make it less subtle? Because the average person hasn't had the years of ear training and knows how this subtle thing will work with other things, Yeah. So they want people to be impressed when they go hit the preset, especially if they're doing it in a trial version of it. So they amp up the presets to be really obvious and not so subtle. And so I think that goes really well with your advice that the presets can be a bit much. And how did you train your ears to know that that busyness or that intensity in a reverb or in a delay or whatever form of preset you're using, how do you develop good taste in any of that? EQ, reverb, delay, whatever.
I think I first started it was just frustrating because I was using stuff and leaving a lot of the presets, a lot of the crap on each one of the instruments. I go, why is my mix sounding smaller and smaller and smaller? And we want to have this big mix, right? We want to have this big thing. And so I did some research on it and found out that frequencies were canceling each other out. It was getting smaller. But I think my main go-to still to this day is reference tracks. If I'm doing a jazz project, cocktail jazz, go find some cocktail jazz music that sounds great and try to match your instruments, your mixes, your drums. Try to match them all to taste. If I'm doing a pop sound, if I'm doing, name your, Doja Cat, something which I don't, I'm not producing a lot, but if I was, I go and get 4 or 5 of her songs that are in the style of the song I'm producing and listen to them and listen to what's the bottom end doing, what's the keyboards doing, what are the what are all the drums or percussion or whatever they're using for that, what are they doing, what do they sound like, what effects are they using. And really it's and we've talked about this before, it's reverse engineering what the people that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on this, you reverse engineer what they're doing, you can make your stuff sound like it's hundred thousands of dollars. In fact, that's what we're talking about before we started today. At the Taxi Rally, and again, I encourage everybody, if you're on the fence, and even if you're on the wrong side of the fence, go to the Taxi Rally. In one of the taxi luncheons years and years ago, I was there, and one of the mentors told me, he says, I'm going to tell you, this is going to be the best thing that nobody's going to tell you here, and I'm going to tell you it, and you're going to love me for it. And he said, when you get home, go and find the 5 different genres of music you want to do. And I can't remember what mine was at that time, Matchbox 20, Train. I don't know who they all were, Pink. And he says, get an MP3 or WAV file of that, stick it right in your DAW, and go and find the tempo and do what the kick drum's doing, and find the kick drum, find the sound, do what the hi-hat's doing, do what the snare's doing. Now do what the bass is doing. You can put your own chord progression in there if you want to. And so I put my own chord progression in there. He says, now do what the bass player's doing within your chord progression. He said, now do what the guitars are doing. Go through every single instrument and do what they do, and then mix it. How are they mixing? What effects do they have? Where are they placing things? So I'm going from Pink song back here. I'm going back and forth, and I'm mixing it. And when I got done, I think my first song took me a couple days to do. I listened to it and I sounded like a world-class producer. And I did that over a period of a month on 5, 6, 7 songs. And I didn't want to release any of those because they were too close. I didn't want copyright problems. But it started training me. And then in my second month and my third month, I had learned some of these tricks. And so I was starting to naturally do things in those genres the way that those producers and those musicians and those arrangers were doing them. But my learning curve in 1.5 months just went through the roof as far as being able to produce. And I wish I could remember the mentor's name at the Taxi Road Rally Luncheon, because it was one of the best tips that I ever got for speeding up my process of learning to become a good producer. It was invaluable. So
that's great advice. I think any professional, successful, I do this for a living engineer and producer would tell you that that's great advice, that's how they learned. And I remember,
if you go to art school, you're going to copy all the masters.
Yeah.
If you're Tiger Woods and you're 10, 11 years old, you're going to learn how to swing like everybody else swing. You learn by imitating those that are great. And over a period of time, you pick up all of those skills.
And you know what? I completely agree with you, because when I was a baby engineer, I bought a pair of JBL 4311s, brought them home. Those were like the NS10s of that era. And I put them on the floor in my apartment, and I would get home from the studio in a prone position with the two speakers out here towed in at me, and I would listen to whatever albums were on the radio at the time. And I would make notes. I would make notes on the liner notes. I would make notes on the back of the album cover. I would do it in a spiral bound notebook. And then I went through what I called, once I graduated from being an assistant to a first engineer, I went through an imitative stage. First, you're just happy to get the signal from the microphone out in the studio to the meters on the tape machine. Yay, I've done that. But then you want to get like a Fleetwood Mac snare drum sound or a Joe Walsh guitar sound, whatever it is. And you become your own person by mastering those other people, going through that, just like you said with painters. You can't paint like Picasso unless you've studied the masters before you tried to become Picasso. So it worked for me. It works for everybody. Shirelli says the same thing. All of my friends who are accomplished engineers, we all had our heroes. We all imitated what we did by learning how to imitate. How do you get that Fleetwood Mac snare sound? When you come up against a song where you want something that sounds like the Fleetwood Mac snare sound because it's dry and a little pointed, but you want more bottom end on it and a little room, you've got a starting point and a warehouse of knowledge in your brain that allows you to, like, shut your eyes and your brain will envision the physics of that sound. I need to boost a little at 100 hertz. I need to add 65-second slap on the snare, whatever it is. So, yep, you are so right on the money. All right.
It's and that jazz project of 1950s, the Charlie Parker stuff I was doing right away on the first song. Why doesn't my snare? I was using real snare. Why doesn't my snare sound right? Why doesn't my snare sound like them? And I would go back and I'd listen to watch these 1950s tapes, videos, black and white things of them playing. I go, why? And then it dawned on me, well, nobody back then was putting the mic on the snare.
Right.
So I moved the mic away from the snare and messed around with it a little bit. And okay, it starts to sound more like they would have, what they had, maybe, 4 mics for the whole band, maybe, and when they're recording back in the day. So it gave me a lot more authentic, and you have to do that fine line between, okay, if I sound too much like the 1953 recording, I'm probably not going to get placed, because it might be a really bad sounding recording, but you want to get that, still want to have that vibe in there, so yeah, it's all those, we hate, those of us that went to college, I hated the word homework, but doing the homework, spending that extra time saves you months and months and months down the road in your learning curve. So just do the homework, listen to the stuff.
If it feels like homework and you're working on music and engineering and production stuff, then you might want to become a dentist, because even though it is technically homework, it's like your passion, which makes, they say if you have a job that you love doing, it'll never feel like work. So, okay, I'm going to open this up to Q&A. I'm going to live up. We've got 20 seconds before I hit the last half hour of the show. I am going to give away 2 copies of the book without all my little Post-it notes all over it towards the end of the show. So please don't be shy about reminding me, because I have hit the off button and walked out of the room having not given away books. And I wanted to let you guys know that next week, I really want the attendance to be strong for next week's show, because it's not the sexiest topic, but it's an important topic, which is I want you guys to tell me what kind of sponsors you want at this year's Road Rally, our convention. How can I say this? Last year, the sponsorships for the physical Road Rally were kind of skinny. They learned during COVID, we don't actually have to show up. We could just, write a check and sponsor the online version of the Road Rally, the sequels that Michael does afterwards. I'm not doing sequels this year because it just puts too much stress on me to get that stuff together and do the live physical road rally. So I really, if you guys will let your voices be heard, do you want it to be gear companies? What kind of gear companies? Software companies? What kind of software? Then I can take the chat from that show and show it to them. Go, look, this is what the audience is asking for. So show up. I think it'll be really cool. So that's that. Let's move on to. I have one last quick question. Songs or instrumentals, which has made you more money over the roughly 2 decades that you've been doing sync?
Instrumental cues, just because there's so many more of them that you can place. Now, I also songs can make you more money per song. If you've got a song that gets in the foreground of a major show, that can be a great payday, a killer payday. Both.
What's define a killer payday? And I know that there's a range, and it's not like you will always get this amount.
A killer payday would be in 5 figures, over $10,000 on the sync fee, and then whatever back end royalties it is. That's if I get 5 figures, I'm doing a little dance. Most of my syncs are in the 4-figure range. And some of them are smaller, but I think songs are. I encourage all songwriter artists to get into the sync world because it can break you as an artist if you get a great placement that's in the foreground on a popular TV show or even an average TV show. It can break you. And there's tons of room for them. But yeah, me personally, just because I've done so many more, 90% of what I've done have been instrumental cues. But the last couple of years, I've done a lot more songs. I'm really trying to do vocal, and I'm talking vocal songs here. I also need to mention, and I think you've mentioned this before, but in the last few years, this would speak more specifically to artists, songwriters, vocalists, artists, songwriters. There's a huge trend of reimagined old hits and old songs. And in the book, I mentioned one. I thought it was a great example. I was watching some rom-com last year. It was a movie called Love at First Sight. And they came to that point where they like almost kiss, but they don't. But it's just like it's probably the greatest thing in rom-coms. Everything else can probably be thrown away. But there's songs coming on, and it's just like the vibey. It's just acoustic guitar and vocal, and it's kind of in the background, but you can hear the lyrics. And I'm going, God, this is perfect. What is? And they're getting through the whole verse, and I'm going, this sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't recognize the song. And then they get in the chorus right before they're going to kiss, and it goes, I want to dance with somebody. I want to dance with somebody who loves me, an old Whitney hit.
Yep. And, Whitney's first hit, I believe, yeah.
Totally reimagined acoustic guitar, singer-songwriter vibe, moody, vibey vocal. And I just went, wow, that's cool. And we hear those things happening in ads a lot. And if somebody's got something for an ad, those can pay really, really, really well.
People don't really understand kind of how easy it is to do reimagined versions, but I've got a simple formula. If it's a fast song, do it slow. If it's hard, do it soft. Do the opposite of what the hit was, and then come up with a vocal that's kind of ethereal and feels a little cinematic, and probably drown it in just a tad too much reverb, and you're about 80% of the way there if you follow that simple formula.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. That's what I'm kind of hearing overall. And just do it. Why not? Especially if you're an artist. If you're an artist that's doing that stuff, man, go for it. Go for it. It can break you. I mean, this girl, what was her name? That did that song, Morgan Harper Jones, maybe. But yeah, it was an unknown artist to me. But I went and looked it up, listened to a bunch more tunes, which I'm sure 500,000 people did after seeing that movie, because it was such a well-placed song in a very emotional moment of the thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
songs, and yeah, I do. Back to your original question, I can circle back that I do way more, probably 90%.
Instrumentals. Well, and that's a function of slots in shows. The average reality show is going to have 80 to 100 slots for music in it, whereas a 60-minute drama is probably going to have 2 or 3. So there's a lot more competition for the songs, and when you land one, it pays more. But the other, so do both. Bread and butter comes from the instrumental cues, and the occasional whoop-de-doo, I just got $6,500 for a sync fee on that one. By the way, God, I'm going over my thing, but we just had some listings come in with $10,000 sync fees. And we literally reached out to the person running the listing and said, just double checking, because sync fees that libraries get are frequently in the like $2,500, $3,500 range. I think that's a pretty fair statement. And he hipped me to the fact that he said, actually, the lowest sync fee I've seen in some time was $7,500, and that's because they hit the end of their budget. He said, we have definitely seen bigger sync fees lately, so I'm encouraged by that. So yeah, we've got a bunch of listings running. I don't know, I think it's several from the same person, and they're. I said to him, "So you sure 10,000 isn't like for somebody? It's a baby band that's got a following or kind of a hit going on one of the streamers?" And he said, "No, if you've got that going on," he said, "I would say the average number for that is $17K for a sync fee." So wow.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, I'm going to open it up to questions, and I do want to. Katrina Seifert asked a question a very long time ago, and I think she's in Australia, so she's probably anxious to go through a shrimp on the Barbie. Oh God, I could get arrested for bad jokes like that. Anyway, hi Katrina. Sorry. I think she asked, what piano sample do you use?
I've got 3 or 4 different samples, and I'm often combining these days. I've got it's the Easy Drummer. I think they make a piano sample that I'm using. I think
Easy Keys.
Easy Keys. I think there's one from Addictive or somewhere else that I'm using. I still have the Kawai that's in Sample Tank 2. That's a 15-year-old sample. But I like
You're
that.
probably their best customer if memory serves.
I like that as a bass, and it wouldn't work for most people, but I have a really heavy touch, and it is a softer sounding thing, so I can wail on these things without some of the great piano sounds when I play them. Some of the Steinway stuff that's out there, virtual Steinways. It's just too much for me. I have to totally change my style of playing. But yeah, I think I have one other one. I just got an acquaintance of both of ours just released one. I think it's for free. Daniel Holter sampled his Steinway that he has and sent it to me.
Wow.
I haven't really played around with a lot lately, but there's so many good ones out there, but I would also, because of my experience, I would find one that works with your touch and that sounds good with your touch, and they will sound different. Somebody with a lighter touch might need a brighter sounding piano, and me, somebody with a heavier touch, that brightness just gets to be too much, and I don't like really messing too much with the EQ on them. So yeah,
I think that's great advice, because I was at my granddaughter's school play a month or so ago, and I had my adult daughter, her mom, sitting on my right, and my adult daughter's close friend, sitting on my left. And I couldn't stop smelling the perfume of this woman sitting next to me, but I didn't want her to think I was like a dirty old man pervert. So I said to my daughter, Christine's perfume is like the best smelling perfume I've ever smelled in my life. And so later, my daughter said, "Hey, Christine, what are you wearing?" And she told her the name. It was called Celui, CELUI, which is a relatively new brand. Anyway, it was expensive. I had no idea that you could spend $240 on a bottle of perfume, but that's because I don't buy a lot. Anyway, I decided to splurge, buy it for my wife, and it arrived. My wife is out of town. It arrived the other day. I couldn't resist, so I sprayed just one little spray on my forearm. And I went, it doesn't smell anything like Christine. And my daughter said, Dad, it smells different on every person, which goes to you saying that your touch might sound completely different on a Steinway than somebody else's. I will tell you that I went to a store. I was standing at the cash register a couple hours after I sprayed that on my wrist, and the girl at the cash register said to me, "What kind of cologne are you wearing? That smells incredible." All right. Well, thank you for the folks at Celui. My second bottle will be free because I just told hundreds of people about you. Anyway, it's pretty awesome.
Right. The piano thing, another, just really quickly, that I've been doing for years and years, is whatever acoustic piano I'm using, I'll often take an old DX7 sound from the 80s, that old DX7 thing, and I'll put about 10%, 9% of it in there, just way in the back. You can't hear it, but it's there. And especially if I'm doing more contemplative, reflective kind of stuff, it just, yeah. And so I suggest experimenting around with combining a couple things, as long as it still sounds like an acoustic piano, if that's what you're going for, but play around with those things. You never know what you're going to find that's going to be really cool.
Develop good taste after you've failed a bunch of times. Martin Lacombe asks, do you find new samples or sound/samples for every cue you do, or is there a pool of personal samples that you always go back to make the writing process quicker?
Oh yeah, I have templates. If you are doing a bunch of cues that are the same, like when I was doing I'll go back to the old Southern rock stuff I was doing, and I probably did, for a lot of TV shows, because of the success of Duck Dynasty, I probably ended up doing 100 or maybe more Southern rock cues. But I had a template. I know my crunchy guitar sound. I knew my Hammond B3 organ. I knew my, 2 or 3 kits that gave me the garagey drum sounds that I wanted. Bass. I know that a lot of those guys were playing bass with a pick back then, but I liked the finger playing bass better, just because I like the little more warmth on it for my personal taste, even though a lot of those 70s bands were using pick when they were playing bass. So yeah, and in any style that you're going to do a lot of stuff with, I go to the same samples. And
I think that's true for everybody who does this for a hobby or living. Anybody who's done it for any period of time, they all use templates. You shouldn't spend 2 hours looking for an 808 kick that you've used on hip hop 10 other times before. Just go to that one again, because nobody's going to say, "Oh, I remember he used that kick on something I got from him 2 years ago." If it works, it works. Keep using it. Let's take a question here from Mike Sparty. Question, sorry if I butchered your name. Won't be the first, won't be the last one. Uploading for Taxi. Oh, I see. Okay. Well, is it a no to upload to personal Spotify or YouTube channels, or should we use those sites in addition to Taxi to upload our music to promote?
So can you upload to Taxi and to Spotify? Is that the question?
Yeah, and YouTube. I think what he's asking is a somewhat complicated question, in that some libraries will say, "Oh, I'm fine if you've got your music on Spotify." Others won't. So I would reserve uploading that music to anywhere until it gets signed with a company and say, "Can I do this? Can I do that?" Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think so. And there, you got exclusive and non-exclusive deals. Generally, non-exclusive, you can do most of what you want. Exclusive, although I have had exclusive libraries where they basically own everything, and it's their. I've signed away that stuff. They own it, but I've said, hey, myself and the other musicians that played on this would really like to put this on our website, so I just asked permission, and they'll either say no, or they in the last case I did, they said yeah, as long as it's not downloadable, as long as it's just streamable, you can put it on the website so you can show your work, brag about it. But yeah, I think I'd agree with you. If you're pitching to libraries and publishers, wait until after you get your deal, because some of them may not want to do it.
Yeah, and especially don't do one of the admin deals with any of
Oh
those
yeah.
companies, CD Baby, TuneCore. They're all great companies. Their distribution is wonderful, and they're not doing anything shady. But if you do a distribution deal with them, that's kind of okay with most of the libraries. They may ask you to take it down or something, but don't do the publishing or publishing admin deal, because, again, I call that musical bigamy. You're not allowed to have two wives. You're not allowed to have two publishers unless they agree to a co-pub deal, which they won't for film and TV stuff. So just hold your horses on that. So here's the next question. Dean, how do you know when your cues will be played in a show? Does the library tell you beforehand, or do you just know from your publishing company well after it was already placed?
There's some cases, especially when you get a sync fee, where you might know ahead of time. Although I've gotten sync fees and they haven't told me when it's going to be in a show, so I don't know until after the fact.
Nice, nice surprise.
Yeah, nice surprise. There's a very friendly taxi company that where you do know ahead of time. They're one of my few publishers that I will usually know ahead of time if something's getting placed. Most of the stuff that I have that is not in network shows, it's in reality shows, I don't know it's placed unless I'm watching the show. I wouldn't know that it's placed until I get my royalties. A lot of those don't pay a sync fee, and you're just going on royalties. Sometimes the royalties can be really good. I had one come up 2 weeks ago. It was a reality show, and a tune of mine got used, and in the 1 hour show they used it 8 different times. I think it's a record for me. The same song came up 8 different times, and the good news is you get paid on each of those.
And the song title was either Really Good Cue or Really Lazy Editor, or a combination thereof.
Yeah.
Somebody's trying to make a deadline, go, well, that works here too.
Yep, that works. Keep going. Yeah.
Yep. Sorry, I'm looking for questions that make sense. With the solo piano project, did Dean have to deliver both hands mixed, then a left hand alone, then a right alone delivery?
No. It was just there have been a couple solo piano things that I've done in the past, although the last one wasn't like this. Most of the time it's just deliver the solo piano. That's it. But there were a couple times that I think I initiated this, where I thought, well, to give more flexibility, I'll just take the melody off and give them kind of an underscore that's just more the chord left hand thing going. But I don't think I was asked for that. I think I just did that to give them more options of placements for that. But nope, just straight solo piano. But there again, I always want to, and I reiterate this quite a bit in this last book. If you've got a publishing deal, if you've got a library deal, whatever the publisher wants, whatever the library wants, that's what you give to them. And it'd be a specific, and they'll tell you exactly what they want, what file delivery they want, what stems they want, all that, but give them exactly what they want. It's just real simple.
Yeah, even if you think you know better than they do, still give them what they want.
Give them what they want.
Yep. I just saw a really good question. Oh, this is from Nancy Kalel. Hey, Nance, do you still submit for exclusive listings, or do you prefer non-exclusive?
I like both. They're both are different. I mean, non-exclusive is nice if you are an artist and want to sell your records, or your spot. See there again, my age. If you want to do your Spotify playlists, those are nice. But exclusive, a lot of times has way better worldwide. They've already got agreements, and because they own all of the rights, they can make deals way easier with all of the countries around the world. And I think my last ASCAP statement, in fact, they all recently, my last international, I had placements in 60 or 70 countries. And so, if it's an exclusive, I want to know them because I want to know the reputation of the company, and are they getting good placements? And the last 6 or 7 years of the exclusive deals I've been, you don't always get this, but I've been getting paid an upfront fee to do the CDs that I'm doing for them too, which I really like these days, although that's got some drawbacks too. So yeah, that's a long answer to your question. I like both. I like non-exclusive and I like exclusive for different reasons. But most of all, I like whatever they get me a great sync and a great placement, and I make money.
This is a great question. You actually address this in the book, but I'd like you to address it here for the show as well. As composers, from Martin Lacombe again, as composers that generally write on our own, how do you keep yourself motivated even during times of great self-doubt and create blocks? You've created blocks. Yeah, so how do you write when something just makes you go, oh, what the hell am I even doing this for?
Yeah, well, that's the story of my life. It is what the hell am I doing this for? But I would say that most, at least 50% of the time, when I'm writing or going into the studio, it's not the first thing I want to do that day. It's maybe I want to do something else. Maybe I just want to go outside or go into the garden or want to go on a hike or something. And I do love recording, and I love writing, and I love all of that. So that's not to say that I don't love it, but there are days when I kind of don't feel like it. But I've forced myself to have patterns. Get up in the morning, do my whatever emails I have to do. If I've got any kind of deadline at all, I go in the studio at 10 o'clock. And even on the days that I don't feel like working at all, just start with the kick drum and go from the kick drum to the hi-hat or whatever. Whatever your process is, start there. And I guarantee you within 10 or 20 minutes, you'll be into it. The muse doesn't always come. Sometimes you have to knock on the muse's door, but the muse will always answer. A quick story I have: when one of my daughters was young and she was taking piano lessons, and there's not a lot of 8-year-olds that want to spend 45 minutes to an hour playing piano. And I had a psychologist friend tell me, just tell her she has to practice for 10 minutes. That's all. And the idea was turn that mountain of 40 minutes or mountain of an hour into a molehill. And so I tell her, you only have to practice for 10 minutes. Well, the psychologist knew that after 10 minutes, she'd be into it, and she'd go on for 25, 35 minutes. It's the same thing for us, for psychology. And when I write these books, writing a book is, I'm going to write a 200-page book. That's just overwhelming to me. I'm defeated before I even start. So break it down into small parts. Okay, what are the chapters I might want to do? Okay, break a chapter down into what's the paragraph and what's the topic of that, and then just write a paragraph or write a couple sentences. Break it down, and once you're doing that, you'll probably get going, and you'll probably do a little more and a little more. Break it down to the smallest part, start from there. Songwriting is easier for me because that's probably my first love, and I can just sit down at any time. And if I don't have anything to write a song about, then I'll just write a song about an inanimate object, like the three-legged chair that's sitting in the corner of the room, just some silly song, just to keep practicing songwriting.
Yeah.
Just to keep those muscles, because if it's like any athlete, if you don't work the muscles, they're not going to be fine-tuned and they're not going to be in tone. So
When I first laid eyes on her, you could have knocked me over like a two-legged stool. There you go. Country song inspiration right there, buddy. All right, I'm going to give away 2 copies. Hold on. Let me call the control room. Guys, let's see a copy of Dean's book in the shot. There we go. We're going to give away 2 copies of Q-Tips. Many of the things that we've talked about, virtually all of them today, are in this book. Like I said, whoops. Oh, come on, control room. Damn, I got to get a new technical staff. I read the whole book cover to cover, and it's great. And I would not say that. I would just merely hold the book up and not say it's great, because Dean's an old friend. Actually, I wouldn't have the book on the show if it weren't great. That's the real truth. But I also encourage you to get both of these guys, Demystifying the Cue and Demystifying the Genre. The 3 of them together. If you own these books, which, by the way, I read this like in 3 hours, maybe, cover to cover. I did take the Evelyn Wood speed reading course when I was 12 years old, and I was a finalist in the state of Illinois, but don't really keep up with it. But if you have those 3 books, it's not about being Composer of the Year. It's not about being the most talented person. It's about giving the industry what it finds to be useful. And Dean hands you the keys to the kingdom for both songs and instrumentals. Here's somebody that needs music that they can use, not that they love or listen to in their car. And those 2 things are not necessarily mutually exclusive. But first and foremost, does it make the scene better? So give them what they ask for, which you just said, and you will be golden to them. All right, so here's what we're going to do is, for the first book, I'm going to have you type the initials DK in the chat room, and Liz is going to pick somebody. I will preface this by saying that only to people in the U.S. or Canada, because, like I've mentioned before, when we go to ship a book overseas, it costs way more than the book. And Liz is going to pick one randomly by running her finger up and down the list, and then we'll do a second drawing where I have you type something else in. Or you could just call me at home tonight, and I'll recite what I memorized while reading the book this weekend. Wow, nice sized crowd today.
Or call me at home.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's see. Dean's number is... Oh, I do have it.
Yeah, I've got yours as well. Careful.
That's all right. During the lockdown, I actually had somebody find my address, on the internet, and they must have done a drive-by. I came out to get the mail one day, and there was a CD with a very nice letter in my home mailbox.
Wow, that's both impressive and scary at the same time.
I could not agree more. Sorry, back when I worked at Criteria in the mid-'70s, there was a young lady that was infatuated with Andy Gibb, the youngest brother of the Bee Gees, and he was recording an album there, and there was a girl that literally pitched a tent on a piece of gravelly real estate right next to their parking lot, and she just literally lived there during the entire making of the album so that she could go, "Hi, Andy," every day when he walked out of the studio. I would hire security. Personally.
Criteria. I was just watching another documentary on them a couple nights ago, and they had a whole section on Criteria down there where they recorded when they came over here.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I was there for a lot of that stuff. I actually got to hold up a pencil on a piece of 1/4-inch tape. I was a tape guide they made a big loop out of 1/4-inch tape. I wasn't working on the record, but I knew everybody was working on the record around them all day, every day. Hey, hold up this pencil and tension it about right there. So yeah, you could say my work is all over Saturday Night Fever, or you could not.
So you're on the album and in the movie.
That's there excellent. You go. There you go. Yeah. That's me. I once stopped Barry Gibb in the hallway and said, "Barry," I was like 20 years old at the time, "Barry, how do you write a hit song?" And he looked at me like he couldn't believe I didn't know. And he goes, "Emotion, mate." And he walked away. All right. Reed Gestelin won. And Reed, I know I've blown your names. Gestelin, whatever. You won the book, and you're going to love it. Trust me on that. All right. Now we are going to give away one more copy of this awesome book that you, again, I don't make a penny. There's the book, Q-Tips by Dean Krippaehne. Is there a digital version? Katrina Seifert wanted to know.
Yes.
Yes, there is. Yay. Okay, so for those of you who live outside the U.S., that's probably the easiest way to get it. And now what you're going to type in is Dino, Deano. Dino, that's his nickname to those of us who know him and love him. And Liz is going to pick another winner.
I feel like I should be singing the theme from Jeopardy.
Oh, I've done that. And I got a copyright strike.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
I literally did. And I got a little notice right after the show.
Oh, I got sued last year for $150,000 for having an image that I didn't own up on my website. So be careful of that, all you who are pulling things off of Google and putting them on your websites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a cease and desist and a $6,000 invoice from like iStock Photo or one of those things because somebody in the staff used something that they shouldn't have.
Yeah, there's a new company out there now that is solely doing that, going after. They've got a AI algorithm going around the world looking for unlicensed stuff.
That's a great idea for a business.
I know, and they're sending out these $150,000. We can sue you for that, but we'll settle for just $4,000.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So I pulled down everything that I didn't own is off of every site I have now.
And the winner this time is Sherry Q, who typed in yikes. I don't know why, but she typed in yikes. Well, congratulations, Sherry. And Reed. Yay. Well, Dino, it's always great having you on the show. I hope you'll be at the Road Rally November 7th through the 10th this year. Yep. By the way, for all you people who didn't click on yesterday's email and read our newest newsletter, actually, it wasn't yesterday, it was like Friday's email. Go back and check the, I put a thing in. I went into our successful member stash online and highlighted stuff from how many people were getting deals because, not deals, deals and placements because of who they met at the Road Rally and relationships that began there and music that was handed to people they met literally walking up to get a beer. Oh, hey, I saw you on this panel, and it turned into a long-term relationship that generated income. I know this stuff sounds like marketing hype. Those of you who have been around me long enough to know it's not. I will never, ever say anything that's not 100% true on this show. That stuff happens at the Road Rally. Read about it in our members' own ears or own words. And you can also just go to the Taxi website, taxi.com, and see the newsletter there. Don't forget, next week's show, we are going to tell the sponsors what kind of sponsors we want at this year's Road Rally. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you don't already. Click the alert button so you know when we're bringing you great content like this. And if you have additional questions for Dean that relate to the topic of today's show, please feel free to go into the what do you call it? The comments. I was going to say chat. The comments under the video when the archive goes up. And Dean, if you'd be so kind to stop in a day and answer a couple of those. And thank you so much. It's great to see you as always. And
thank you.
We'll give each other a hug at the Road Rally, I guess, in 5 months. Is that right? Whoa.
Wow.
That's scary.
I can't wait.
I'm recuperating from last year. All right.
That's why I love that. Everybody's watching here now. I will see you at the Road Rally. See you all at the Road Rally.
That's right. And if you don't show up, I'm going to give him your personal address so he can show up and harangue you. All right, you guys, take care. We will see you soon. Where's my music? There it is. I'm going to let this play till he starts to solo. Just so you guys can hear what not to do in most cues. The great Keith LeBrant. Take care, everybody. See you next week. Thank you, Dean.
Thanks.